Hello children, today I'm going to read you the story of Noah and the flood. Once again, this is a Bible story book with little stories from the Holy Bible adapted for children. Here we go. Look, isn't it a lovely picture of Noah and his family? Long ago, there lived a man named Noah. He and his wife had 3 sons. The 3 sons each had a wife, so it was a little family altogether. Perhaps I'll have grandchildren of my own soon, said Noah to himself. He began to dream of happy times ahead. As Noah sat dreaming, he heard a voice. Uh-oh, that is trouble. Because when you're hearing voices, it usually means that you have mental problems. And Noah had some serious problems. I am unhappy, said the voice. You see, the voice was in Noah's head, and therefore it was Noah's own voice. So it stands to reason that it was Noah himself who was unhappy. I made a good world, but people nowadays do very bad things. You see, that was the problem with Noah. He was a little bit judgmental. He didn't like the other people around him. He was constantly telling himself that all the other people in the world were really, really bad. Who's that speaking, said Noah, because of course he didn't realize that it was his own voice in his own head to himself. The one who made the world, And of course, he didn't jump to the conclusion that any normal person would to say like, I think I should look for help here. He said, oh, it must be God. I want to begin the world again, said God to Noah. I want you to help me. You see, God, apparently, according to the Bible, is this omnipotent, omniscient being. And yet, he managed to make a big mistake when he first created the world, and he wanted to do it all over again. I know that doesn't make sense, but maybe you should tell your mommy and daddy that, because they want me to tell you this. Noah listened carefully to everything his own head, God said. Then Noah went to talk to the family. God wants us to build a boat, he said. And of course nobody was going to argue with him, because he was the pater familias, as it's called. He was the boss and everybody listened. A very big boat. God has given me instructions and lots of measurements. I suppose they didn't have anything better to do anyway. Now, to begin, we must fetch some good strong wood. Now that makes sense. The work began. Together they built a boat with 3 decks and a door. Very good. A bit big for a small family, but okay. They put waterproof tar on the outside. Clever. Now we must fetch the animals, said Noah. A mother and father of every kind. Whoa, what a job it was. Yeah, you can say that. Well, do you know, children, how many animals there are in the world? How many different kinds? Well, first of all, children, you have to realize that a word like kind, doesn't actually make an awful lot of sense. But let's just forget about that for a moment. Even if we do pretend that it makes sense, there are so many different kinds of animals. A boat just won't do the job, children. It's not big enough. So I'm starting to think that this story here might be a little lie. But let's just carry on. Maybe it's just a fairy tale. What a noisy job. I can imagine that. We need food too, said Noah. Well, I suppose so. Food for us and food for the animals. Well, I guess that makes sense. You know, you could get some grass and some vegetables for all the vegetable-eating animals, and then the lions and the tigers could eat the other animals. In the end, the work was done. Everyone and everything went safely on board. Well, not everyone and everything, of course. Only Noah's family. And only the animals that they wanted to rescue. Everybody else, millions and millions of, well, even billions of people maybe, stayed outside. They couldn't get on the boat. The boat wouldn't be big enough for them. God shut the door to make damn sure that nobody else was getting on the boat. The rain started to fall. Pitter-patter, splish splash. That sounds all very nice, doesn't it? Pitter-patter, 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 splish splash. Little bit droppy. But you know what happens, when the water goes up and up and up and up and up and up, the rivers burst their banks, homes get flooded, and people drown. It's terrible. And they die. And you know what's really funny? I think God would have a really nice laugh when he saw this. Families where first some people in the family died and the others saw them die and got really upset, and then they died as well. I must have had a good laugh about that one. That was, really... After all, these were wicked people. You have to remember that these were naughty people. They would not share their toys, for example, or they would, always take the biggest piece of cake. Not nice adults, and they had to die in horrible, horrible ways, because they deserved it. Yes. Soon the rain was tumbling down. Splosh, 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 splosh. Yeah. It rained and rained and rained and rained. The flood began to rise. Up and up and up. And up. Look, here's a picture of it. See? This is when the flood is time to get really, really high. And do you see those little hills there? That's where the last few people would climb up on the hill in a desperate attempt to save themselves. But of course, God was having none of it, and he made the water get higher and higher and higher. And there they were all going... And in the meantime, you see, there's the boat with Noah on it. And they would stand on the deck pointing at the people and laughing at them because they were all drowning so happily, and it was such fun to watch. Look, said Noah's wife, the world is like one big sea. Ah, isn't that nice? And there's only us left, said Noah. Isn't that cool? We have all this space for ourselves. He looked down at the grey water. He looked up at the grey sky. It was all as grey as the content of his dark, black, miserable heart. I hope God hasn't forgotten us. No, of course not, Noah. Don't you worry. He has forgotten about everybody else, of course, but you are his little pet. God has not forgotten. God hadn't forgotten. God sent a wind that blew and blew. He parted his two butt cheeks and went... And you know what happened? Woo! Trickle by trickle, the blood began to go down until one day, bump. We've landed, announced Noah. Somewhere. Probably in the backyard of some poor unfortunate schmuck who drowned. Not long after, they saw they were on a mountain top. Noah sent a raven out from the boat. It flapped and flew away. Of course, yes, see, that's a raven. And the raven, of course, is black, and black is a naughty color. I'll try again, said Noah. He sent a dove out from the boat, you see, and the dove is white, which is a good color. Yes, children. Never mind that pigeons, of course, are rats with wings. But he sent it out. With a little leaf it came back. The first time it went, it flew out and flew back and there was nothing. The second time it went, it came back with an olive leaf. You see, the flood had gone up and up and up, and for 40 days all the olive trees had been submerged in water and had died. Anyway, it found an olive tree and it came back with an olive leaf. Everyone on the ark cheered. The flood is over, said God. Let the animals go. Tell them all to have families. I want them to fill the world again. That's a tall order. Of course, the kangaroos who weren't on the boat had to hop all the way back to Australia. That was a long way to go. Out they went. What a noise. Yes, I can imagine that. The moment the ostriches, see, there go the ostriches there, see? And the giraffes and the monkeys. And the problem is that these two monkeys were sitting on those armadillos, or whatever they are there, the armadillos. And of course, the moment they came off the boat, the lions went and ate one of the monkeys. So that's why we don't have any more monkeys. Never mind. Now it's time for you to go, said God to Noah. You and your family must make new homes for yourselves. You must fill the world with people again. Yes. Now, of course, they first had a bit of a job to do because all those stinking, rotting corpses of the people who had died in the flood were still littering the place all over. But, once that was done, they had all that room and could start a new human race out of 6 people. Well, there were a lot of people who had funny faces and, hair growing in places that there shouldn't be, and, were dragging their knuckles over the ground for a long, long time, but that sorted itself out soon enough. You and your family must make new homes for yourself. You must fill the world with people again. And out in the bright, clean world, Noah and his family had a big party. Yeah, they danced on the graves of all those dead people. That was cool. Look, said God, I have put a rainbow in the sky. There is the rainbow. Lovely, isn't it? Now, a rainbow, of course, is just a physical effect caused by water droplets and light reflecting and refracting in those droplets. So rainbows would have existed all along, but obviously Noah and his family had never noticed one before. It's a sign of my promise. I will never flood the world again. Well, I suppose that is one big advantage of what had happened. Of course, tell it to the people in England last year who got flooded, but obviously that wasn't the whole world, it was just local. Noah smiled. Now he knew that forever and ever there would be summer and winter at the same time in Africa. and on the North Pole. Forever and ever there would be a time to sow seeds and a time to harvest crops. Unless, of course, you're living in somewhere in Africa where there is a drought going on and you're starving to death. God's world would be a home for his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. I thought there were Noah's grandchildren. For everyone. Except, of course, if you're not a true believer, then you're going straight to hell. Now, I hope you enjoyed that little story, children, and sweet dreams.